part of awakening was this undeniable realization that there was no separate self, that in fact no separate self had ever existed, nor could ever exist. And it wasn't just that. It was when realizing that there was no separate self, there was nothing that I could call I, me, mine, separate from everything else. Everything that I saw and everything that existed was me, because there was no separation from anything, that no separation could exist. So everything was me, is me. I'm not other than everything else, and the combination and the totality of everything that exists. So this is the realization of emptiness, which we could also call fullness. So we get this idea that emptiness is a void. It's not a void. It's the absence of all things, because things are separate. We give a name to things and form, and our perception based on our thoughts is that things have a self-existing entity and a self-existence. They exist independent of everything else. And of course, that's impossible. And yet that's what we experience in this dream. And when we see that that is impossible and realize that that can't exist, we let go of this illusion and we realize that we're everything, we're the fullness. So emptiness and fullness are really the same. Nothing and fullness, nothing and everything are really the same. There's no real separation between these two. And today I was listening to a teaching by Andrew Holisek, who's teaching on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, a wonderful teacher, and he had this a contemplation for us to examine, to look at, about our dreams, because he also teaches dream yoga and lucid dreaming as a way of understanding death and experiencing death and life. Until we truly experience death, we can't truly experience life, because they're also not separate. Awakening is simply dying of the dream, dying of our attachment to the dream, letting go of the dream. That's all awakening really is. We're not attaining anything that isn't already here. We're simply waking up to what is already here and always here, beyond our dream. So using dreams in this contemplation, think back to a dream that you had recently, something that you can remember vividly. Take a moment to think back to a dream that you can really picture yourself in and sort of recreate in your mind. Take a moment to do this. Now, in this dream, there are dream objects, right? There's an environment, wherever you are. There might be a room, or you're outside, trees, whatever. There may be people or animals or whatever is there. Those are all dream objects. The environment, whatever appears in the environment, these are all objects in the dream. And there's also a dreamer, a subject that's experiencing this dream, that's observing this dream, that's seeing the things in the dream. So for just a moment, see if you can find this dreamer, this dream character that's experiencing the dream, that's observing the dream, maybe interacting with things in the dream, but is experiencing the dream. See if this dream character is really here, is really in as you're remembering it, is really in this dream. See if there is a dream character in the dream. Even though it seems like there must be a dream character to experience the dream. There must be somebody to experience the dream. Otherwise, how is it experienced? So see if there is such a thing. as this dream character, this person that's experiencing the dream. And there's another approach to this too, is to look at the dream objects. Now, in our waking dream, in order for us to see any object in this dream, there must be either sunlight or artificial light, right? We see because the light of the sun or artificial light is reflected off the object and into our eye, into our retina, and from there we're able to see the objects. Without the sun, without the artificial light, there's just darkness. There's no objects, no way of seeing anything. So in this waking dream, we have the sun or an artificial light, and that's how we see. So go back to your sleeping dream and see if there's a sun or an artificial light that's illuminating these objects, that's reflecting off these objects into the eye of the dream character so that the dream character is able to see. See if there's either a sun or an artificial light that's reflecting off these dream objects. Let's take a moment and see if you can find it. You'll find that there isn't one. There's no sun, there's no artificial light, and yet you're still able to see the dream objects. They're still appearing. How? This is the luminosity of the dream itself. The luminosity of emptiness that's allowing these images in the dream to appear so that we can see them. That's what's shining off them. The luminosity of the dream itself. And where is this dream character that we imagine must be there in order to perceive the dream? There isn't one. It's the dream itself. It's the luminosity of the dream itself, the luminosity of emptiness. The dream is aware of itself. The dream is simply aware of itself. There is no dreamer. There are no objects in the dream. There's only the dream. And even the dream, we can't say really is. There's just this emptiness. Emptiness, fullness. What is this emptiness that's not a thing? It's the luminosity that allows us to see the objects in the dream. It's the luminosity that is aware of the objects in the dream. And maybe even interacts with them. But it's the same luminosity, the same emptiness. It's emptiness looking at itself. That's what the dream is. There's no dream observer, no person to observe the dream or interact with the dream. And there's no dream objects. There's just emptiness perceiving itself in the guise of dream objects, in the guise of a dream character experiencing a dream. And I found this little contemplation fascinating, which is why I want to share it with you. Now, you may take a longer time to look into this dream and see if you can find this dream character that's experiencing this. Or see if you can find the light source that is illuminating these objects in the dream. Our awakening is not an accumulation of information or knowledge or dream objects or anything, or enlightenment or anything. Or anything. It's the release of things, the release of our attachment, the release of the illusion of things. It's dying to this illusion. It's allowing ourselves to die to this illusion freely before we're forced to in actual physical death. It's a letting go. If there's no observer of the dream and no dream objects to observe, even though it appears that there are, if there really aren't, then what? If there are no things, then what? Well, the more you let go, the more this luminosity shines. The more the illusion fades, the more the light grows. The more we realize the light. And what is this light that's not a light? Because it's not a thing. This is our true nature. This is where we return to. We can do this through deep meditation and spiritual practices and the gifts that this life brings us to realize that it's a dream and wake up from it. Or we can do this in physical death. Although mostly in physical death, if we're releasing it if we're attached to it in life and not releasing it, resisting the letting go, then we'll simply start over again in another life, as what the Tibetan Buddhists believe, reincarnation. But in fact, in reincarnation, we're reincarnating in every single moment. We don't have to die to reincarnate. We're always reincarnating. This is the nature of reality, the nature of truth, the nature of emptiness. There is no separate self. This appearance of what appears to be a separate self is simply the combination of everything coming together in this particular form. As I've said before, how could I say these words if the great Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh didn't exist? I was with him for 40 years. Almost everything I say and think might as well be him. How is it separate from him? It's not. I couldn't say this without him, without having been with him, without his experience on me. That's a reincarnation of Thich Nhat Hanh in me. And the same can be said of Ramana Maharshi and all my other teachers. How would I be able to speak to you in the English language, which is my native tongue? But I wouldn't have this tongue without all the teachers that taught me. My parents that taught me language and other people and teachers in school. All of this. I wouldn't be able to speak these words without that, without a culture, without the development of the English language. You can't find anything that says, I did this as a personal, self-existing entity all on my own. There's impossible to find that. How would this body exist without the sunlight water, food, farmers that grew food, parents, ancestors. Well, of course it couldn't, and it doesn't. You know, I had in my life a kind of a difficult, traumatic upbringing, particularly with my father. When I reached maybe age 10 or so, we had a challenging time. His father was kind of very brutal and abusive to him, and unintentionally, without wanting to, he carried on that tradition, what he had gotten from his father, onto me, being the oldest son. So at one point, I went to California when I was 17 and moved like 3,000 miles away from New England in order to do that, to be free of that. And I realized when I was in California, 3,000 miles away, that there was no way to be free, because I couldn't separate myself from him by miles, by a distance of 3,000 miles. I could go to the moon. It wouldn't make any difference. And that was very clear. He was in my head. Not just in my head, but in my DNA, in my chromosomes, in every cell in my body. So there is no way to be separate, even if we would like to be. It's just impossible. And once I realized that, I realized, well, the only solution is to make peace with him, to somehow make peace. And I did. And that made it so much easier, because if you're carrying some grudge or anger or resistance to anybody in your life, you're not separate from them. And you'll never be free until you make peace with them. You don't have to be with them. You don't have to do what I did with my father. Some people you don't want to be around, but you're not separate from them. They're in you. They're part of you. There's no separation anywhere. I mean, often of people that we really disagree with, or that we don't like, or do very harmful things, we wish that we were not separate. We don't want to acknowledge that they're a part of us, or we don't want to be anything like them, which is fine. We don't want to manifest the worst qualities in humanity. Of course not. We want to manifest the best qualities. But we still can't deny that everyone is part of us, even people that we've never met. But all the people that we have, certainly. This is just in the physical levels, in the physical dimension, this is true. It's much more true in the Dharmakaya, in the opening to emptiness of our true nature. There is no separation there whatsoever at all. So when we have experiences in life, like this contemplation of the dream, we can see what we assumed was real, that there is a dream character that's observing the dream, who, after we awaken from the dream, disappears along with the dream. But that dream character never really existed. And we can see this because now we're in the waking dream. We're not in that sleeping dream anymore, so we can look back on it and experiment with it in this way. That the objects are not illuminated by a sun, by a dream sun or a dream artificial light. They're appearing through the light of awareness. The illumination of our true nature. That all that's happening is our true nature, really. The rest is a dream. So even in this waking dream, nothing is apart from emptiness. Emptiness is form, and form is emptiness. There is no separation. All form is emptiness. All form is empty of any separation. any separate self. We give it a name, a tree, a person, a body, a mind, the ocean, God. We have names, that make us feel that these things are separate, self-existing things. And having those thoughts in that language, we reify them, which means we imagine them to be real. And they appear to be real because we're imagining them. But they're not what we think. They're all this fullness, this emptiness, nothing, fullness. And these are not separate things as the words sound, as the meaning of the words indicate. It's not like that. Emptiness is form. Form is emptiness. Nothing is everything. Everything is nothing. They're not separate. Language falls apart in this understanding, in this experience. So I really like the exercise that Andrew Holosek gave today because it's experiential. We can't really understand emptiness without experiencing it. As long as we're very attached to form, very attached to separation, our intellectual understanding of emptiness will never be what emptiness is. Never be what truth is. We have to have a direct experience of it. And you notice that if you let go of that idea of a separate observer, observing things in the dream, separate from the things in the dream, and the dream being illuminated, just we don't even think about that there's no sun there. But to realize that there isn't one. That there's nothing illuminating these objects, and yet they appear to appear. And there's no one who's observing these objects, and yet it feels like there is. When we can let those illusions go, we might be a little nervous about that. There might be a little fear of like, whoa, what's going on here? But if you can just stick with it and experience some of that peace and that space that arises when you do that, you'll become very happy to experience emptiness and truth. It's not like the dream. It doesn't have the guardrails and things to hold on to in the dream. No, freedom doesn't have that. Freedom is free. But it's not dangerous. It's not damaging to us. We're in no danger of letting go. And that's why it's nice to practice it with a dream. After we're awake, where we know it was a dream, it's okay to play with that a little bit. But when you do that, you have a different experience of that dream, right? Because when you're remembering the dream and reliving that dream and reimagining the dream, in some ways, it's like you're back in the dream, right? Because the dream came from you. So you can go back into it because you made it. And when you see the dream and see it in this different way, that there's nothing illuminating these objects, and there's no one observing them. That's the beginning experience of emptiness. The thingness goes away. What happens to the objects in the dream? They're still there. In the waking dream, when you see the objects in the waking dream, what happens to them when you realize that they're not things, that they're not self-existing things, but they're only a manifestation of the totality, that they're all the totality. Everything is you. Does it mean the things disappear? No, they don't disappear. You just see them differently. You realize what they really are. You're no longer in the dream, so you're having a lucid dream. Everything is you. Everything is you. And there is no separate you anywhere, nor separate anything anywhere. That's a dream. That's an illusion. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. They're not different. They're not separate. There is no separation. All the things that we call things, including people, including ourself, including our body, these are not separate from anything else. They're not things. They don't exist without everything else. Everything we see is the totality of everything. And just to experience that for a moment is such an enormous relief. The illusion of separation is suffering itself. It's a burden, an illusion and a burden that we put on ourselves when we believe it, when we reify it. When we're free of that illusion, it's such an enormous relief. Things are as they are, but not as they appear to be to the deluded mind of separation. None of them are ever that, but they are. They are as they are. They appear to be separate and have name and form. That's the illusion. That's the mirage. But what they really are, we can't say because they include absolutely everything. They're infinite. There's no way to find where they end and everything else exists. There is no place like that. They are everything, and they are you, as you are everything. There is no separation between me and everything else, between you and everything else. It's too much for the mind to really understand this. It can only have the most superficial, limited understanding. It's not enough. We have to experience it. And this dream contemplation is one way that we can begin to. It's safe to play with the dream. It's not our life in the waking dream. But once we do it in the sleeping dream, we can do it in the waking dream too. Me and my life, what is that? What is this me? Is it separate from everything else in life, everything else in existence, everything else in the universe? Of course not. How could it be? But we have to experience this to realize it. It's not book knowledge, intellectual knowledge. It's a direct experience. It's gnosis. Gnosis, we feel this knowledge in our heart. It's a feeling. It's a knowing that has nothing to do with knowledge or accumulated knowledge or our mind. Even though that's all there too. We're not taking anything away. We're simply seeing it as it is. It's okay that mirages exist, right? They do. This is a trick of the eyes. We see water where there's no water. It's fine. We don't have to get rid of that. We see the mirage, but we know it's a mirage. That's lucid dreaming. We're aware of what it really is. We see the appearance, but what's really there is not the appearance, although the appearance is really appearing. All of that is fine. In emptiness, everything is included. We don't push anything away because there's nothing separate. Non-duality doesn't mean everything exists, but this formless dimension of emptiness before all existence. No, that's part of it, yes. We do experience that in samadhi, that all form ceases to exist, the separate self, thoughts, and everything. We come back to the 0 point. But all the other parts also exist. The dream of form also exists. The formless dimensions also exist. It's all here. And it's all one. Just as you are.